in, come in. Oh, hi, come away. No, come on. I keep meaning somehow to rearrange all these books because I can never quite find what I want. Things are double shelved. There's such a variety here. This is the story of my life here, sort of done out in shelves. I should go through them all with you one day. But anyway, look at this. I've cleared the library steps of half-written poems and general waste paper, and I'm now going to climb them because I'm going to take down from a high shelf one of these volumes. This is two vellum-bound volumes, the poetry of Keats in a particularly nice edition, and I want to read you a poem of Keats and reflect on it a little. Have a seat, this is, I'm drinking, Lafroig and smoking a Kendal Black Cherry, two distinct and happily complementary pleasures. But we're going to add a third pleasure, which is language, the sheer sensuous sound of words brought to perfection. So, this edition obviously when a poet like Keats achieves classic status, the presses of the world that refused him when he was alive are rushing to print ever more sumptuous editions of his works now that he's dead. This is a particularly beautiful paper. You can see the sort of lines of the pressing of the paper. Chatto and Windus, 1924, bound in vellum. Well, I'm going to read you the shortest of Keats's major odes. Why? Well, we were delving together into that sumptuous edition, that 3-volume edition's up there behind me, of Tolkien's poems. It was wonderful to see Tolkien celebrated as an English poet, which he justly deserves to be, quite separately from all his other achievements. But anyone who has the temerity to call themselves an English poet, and I would include myself in this, only does so because they've fallen in love with, they've been nurtured by, they've been formed by a great tradition of English poetry. And all of us go back to different poets for different things. But there are certain greats, of whom Keats is one, who give you, as it were, some sense of the very medium in which you work. Keats has the finest ear of any English poet for what the melody of sound can do in English. It doesn't, we're not singing, we're not going up and down, but the metaphor of melody is the only way to approach the sheer cadence and beauty of the sounds that he makes through the English language. Almost apart from the beautiful meanings, I mean, they're actually woven together very beautifully, but I think if I were a Frenchman and somebody read me the poems of Keats, I would get pleasure, just as an English schoolboy, when I hardly had the French to go with it, the poems of Verlaine and Rimbaud gave me pleasure. And later I had the extra pleasure of understanding them, but I had another pleasure first. So, I want to read you the ode on Melancholy. It's the shortest of the great odes. I'll read it through uninterrupted, and then I may just go back and linger on one or two places that seem to me so rich and fine. But for now, just let the sound of the words woo you, sensually. Let them caress you and draw you forward. They're just astonishing. So, Ode on Melancholy by John Keats. No, no, go not to Lethe, neither twist wolfsbane tight-rooted for its poisonous wine, nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade, ruby grape of Proserpine. Make not your rosary of yew berries, nor let the beetle nor the death moth be your mournful Psyche, nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mysteries. For shade to shade will come too drowsily and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven, like a weeping cloud that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on the morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies, or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand, let her rave, feed deep, deep upon her peerless eyes. She dwells with beauty, beauty that must die, and joy, whose hand is ever at his lips bidding adieu, and aching pleasure, nigh turning to poison while the bee-mouth sips. Aye, in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy hath her sovereign shrine. Though seen of none, save him whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate fine, his soul shall taste the sadness of her might, and be among her cloudy trophies hung. Astonishing poem. I mean, Keats, in a letter to his brother, once famously said that he felt his muse was telling him to load every vein with ore. So you think of the veins of gold running through the rough rock, but he wants it all gold, you know. He famously began, in a way, the best of his first poems was "Much had I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen," the one on first looking into Chapman's Homer. So the sheer lusciousness and fullness and richness is what we're to do with here. But he starts with a really interesting thing. I mean, he himself, like almost all artists, certainly like all poets of a certain kind like him, was subject to melancholy. He could plumb the depths as well as soar the heights, and there was some relation between both of those two things. And he had more than enough reason for melancholy. He knew himself to be suffering from consumption, as it was called then, tuberculosis. He'd seen his mother die of it. He'd nursed his brother and seen his brother die of it. He was an apothecary, so he knew exactly what the progress of the disease was. And he was in love with a girl whom he knew he could never marry or make a life with, because he was going to die and it would be unfair to her to shackle her to, as Yeats has said, a dying animal. And yet he felt both the love and the sense of doom and all of these things with an unmatched intensity. But his advice is not to indulge in your misery in the sense of piling one awful thing on another, or kind of. He wants you not to go to Lethe. Lethe, of course, is the river of forgetfulness, but it's in early 19th century England. Lethe is a euphemism for opium. It's the idea it's the drug of numbing and forgetfulness. So he thinks of all the things that might be associated with melancholy and says, don't go there. And there's this wonderful contrast, glut thy sorrow on the morning rose. It's at the almost melancholy that you need to be most intensely aware of beauty. It is only beauty that will help you bear the grief. So, but listen to the sound of this. No, no, go not to Lethe. Do you hear just the sound? The oh. It's very daring to give 3 O's in the 2 no's and the go at the opening to kind of make you utter the syllables of woe. No, no, go not to Lethe. Neither twist, wolfsbane tight-rooted for its poisonous wine. And already in the phrase poisonous wine, you've got this idea of this double nature of beauty and death, somehow married together. Nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade, ruby grape of prospering, of course, who is to sink to the underworld. And then extraordinary line, make not your rosary of yew berries. There's something about the aerie of rosary and the area of berries that are kind of playing with each other. Nor let the beetle nor the death moth be your mournful Psyche. Psyche is the goddess of the soul. Then this is just a joy to say. Nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mystery. The owls of the downy owl. But then, he said that poetry offers you phrases that feed the soul. And one of the phrases that feeds my soul and actually gives me a sense of what poetry is the deathless phrase of Keats here. A partner in your sorrow's mysteries. Is it not the case that your sorrow is this kind of mystery even to yourself? But to find a partner in your sorrow's mysteries, some people find that in love. People find that in a piece of music or in a painting or in a poem, that something of their sorrow's mysteries has been partnered or expressed. And then he tells you the fear, shade to shade will come too drowsily and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. Do you hear the sounds of downy owl, drown, drowsily drown, and then soul, just turning it off. So he says, don't do that. And then the middle verse of the 3, he says, astonishing piece of advice, and one I've taken many times. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven, that's extraordinary. He compares the melancholy fit to the fall of rain, but the rain comes from the heavens. And it's a startling idea to think that your melancholy fit might be heaven sent. There might be something in it from which you can learn. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven, like a weeping cloud that fosters the droop-headed flowers all and hides the green hill in an April shroud. There's an astonishing emblem of hope concealed in that line, that whole image. That the melancholy fit is maybe the rain. I mean, we always talk about the poet says, il pleut dans le monde comme il pleut dans mon cœur. It rains in the world as it rains in my heart. But if you compare sorrow with rain, then you're thinking about the rain will one day bring forth something fruitful. Heaviness may endure for a night. Joy cometh in the morning, or as another scripture says, he that goeth out in tears, bearing the seed, will come home laughing with the harvest. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven, like a weeping cloud that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, the hill will come through. Then, and this is just the choice of this word, I'm not sure if I can think of another poem which has this word in it as a verb. Then glut thy sorrows on a morning rose. Of course, glut is the root of the word glutton, and to glut is to be absolutely full to over brimming. Glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies. And then he cuts to the chase a bit about melancholy might be caused by all the ups and downs and anguishes and love. So if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand, and let her rave feed deep upon her peerless eyes. We used to parody that famous line amongst my friends and I when we went to this particular pub that had very good pies that the landlady made. And we said that we would feed deep upon her peerless pies. I have to say that actually as a piece of advice about romance and love, this isn't a good one. If your mistress some rich anger shows, she probably wants you to listen rather than imprisoning her soft handle and letting her rave. But there you go. Anyway, is she the mistress, or is she melancholy now? Here's the final stanza. She dwells with beauty that must die. There is the heart of the whole thing. The intensity and poignancy of our experience in this world is precisely that it's framed by mortality, that every beautiful thing passes, that we have but a moment and the moment is gone. Here a moment, gone forever. And that's what gives beauty its intensity. She dwells with beauty that must die, and joy, whose hand is ever at his lips bidding adieu. You've no sooner tasted the joy than it's fled. And then this extraordinary sensuality and aching pleasure, nigh turning to poison while the bee-mouth sips. And then he comes into the image of the honey, the bee and the nectar. You know, it's extraordinary. Bee in the flower, getting the nectar. And then he finishes with this conclusion, which I think is both psychologically and spiritually true. I, in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy hath her sovereign shrine. That even in the most delightful and intense things, there's this melancholic undertow. There's this elegiac tone. It's particularly true of English poetry, but it's true of all our experience, because we're in time, and time takes everything away. But we have eternity in our hearts, and we're longing for an eternity we haven't got. So there's always a sense of elegy in every praise of beauty. Veiled I in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy hath her sovereign shrine. Though seen of none, and then comes one of the most sensual images in the whole of English poetry. Though seen of none save him, whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate fine. That is, nobody's gone further or better than that in the expression of a moment of intense pleasure, even in the midst of elegy and melancholy. And so he concludes, his soul, it's not about the body, his soul shall taste the sadness of her might, and be among her cloudy trophies hung. That we have given ourselves over, as if you like, as a prize or a gift to melancholy. But it's because melancholy has her shrine in the temple of delight. It's not a poem, I mean, it has some advice about how to deal with melancholy, but it's not ultimately a poem of instruction or information or anything of that kind. It's a perfect expression of a certain state of combined mind, body and soul, expressed in images which can never be forgotten and in phrases which are so perfectly homed that they've lived in the memory of every generation since Keats wrote it. So it's a pleasure to share it with you. Every blessing.